Welcome back. The cross-examination of National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batohi, at the inquiry into the fitness of suspended South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions, Chauke, has now been postponed to Thursday. Batohi, as the main complainant for the National Prosecuting Authority, has been facing cross-examination by Chauke's legal team. The inquiry, chaired by retired Constitutional Court Justice Nkabinde, is investigating allegations that Chauke shielded high-profile and politically connected individuals from prosecution. Let's now unpack this further with a senior researcher at the Dullah Omar Institute at the University of the Western Cape, Dr. Redpath. Dr. Redpath, thank you for your time and for joining us this afternoon. Perhaps maybe let's just go to the beginning and the objectives of this inquiry, and maybe you just explain to us what the inquiry is determining to find with regards to the fitness of office for Advocate Chauke.
Yeah, so in short, it is to decide whether he is fit to hold office or not. The terms of reference start off quite specific by looking at the two matters of the Boyson's matter, which was prosecuted, and the Dullah matter, which was not prosecuted under Chauke. However, the third part of the terms of reference are much broader and refer to competence and capacity of Chauke to hold office. And finally, there's also part 7 of the terms of reference says if anything else arises during the progress of the inquiry, those matters can be added in at a later stage. So the terms of reference are actually quite broad. However, the evidence brought to bear thus far by the National Prosecuting Authority has focused on the first 2 parts of the terms of reference. And it's unclear whether additional witnesses will bring to bear evidence which relates to the other parts of the terms of reference.
And speaking about these first 2 parts of the terms of reference, I mean, the NPA chief had taken this matter to the president about 2 years ago, and she says she was guided by legal advice for her to take this decision of Chauke's conduct to the president. From a legal governance perspective, was this the correct route?
Well, certainly the president is the only person who can recommend removal of a director of public prosecutions, which then has to go through Parliament. And what she did was, when she entered office, she appointed a panel which was headed by the then Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Rodney de Kock. And it was Rodney de Kock's panel that looked into these specific allegations. I'm not sure whether they looked in beyond these specific allegations. And they then reported to Advocate Batohi, and she then referred on to the president. Now, the reason she appointed Advocate de Kock and these various other people is she was not around when the allegations took place. And so she wanted some distance between herself and the inquiry, so it was not perceived, I think, as coming from her directly. And the unfortunate part of this whole incident is then that Advocate Rodney de Kock died about a year ago. And so he has not been able to give evidence as to exactly what the panel did. And obviously, Advocate Batohi doesn't know exactly what the panel did because she was not part of the panel. But what she does know is what they reported to her.
And I mean, now the issue of the cross-examination of Advocate Batohi has been an issue of contention. She believed that she would be shielded from cross-examination. What does the law, or even just the terms of reference, say with regards to such rights of witnesses in an inquiry of this nature?
Well, the terms of reference don't specify the rules of procedure. The terms just say that the Judge Nkabinde can determine the rules of procedure for the inquiry. Now, this is not a disciplinary hearing, and it's not it's not a trial. It is about someone's appropriateness and fitness to hold office, and it has been of some concern that the approach taken thus far has been more like a disciplinary hearing or more like a trial. And that is a little bit concerning because the inquiry should be broader than that. It should be, is this person actually who we need right now in Gauteng South? Do they have the competence and capacity? And there has been something of a tendency to put the NPA itself on trial. And I'm not sure if that is the appropriate way to proceed. Obviously, the rights and wrongs of exactly what went down need to be established. But even if in these two matters there are differences of legal opinion, the broader inquiry should still look at things far broader than this. And I would hope that the NPA would bring to the inquiry a far wider set of data around exactly what has happened in South Gauteng, which is really that commercial crime prosecutions have all but collapsed. And that strongly suggests that the capacity to lead the division is not there in Advocate Chauke.
And I mean, Doc, you talk about the NPA not being seemingly put on trial through this process, but I'm sure it also does speak to the broader credibility and the functioning of the NPA when we look at this particular case.
Yes, and there have been some very concerning aspects about how they've presented their evidence thus far. The focus on, the two matters that were only part of the terms of reference. Obviously, we don't know what other witnesses are still going to appear, and the broader strategy might become obvious as we proceed. But currently, at the moment, confidence in the operation of the NPA has not been boosted by this inquiry.
We do know, like you mentioned, in terms of the terms of reference, that it was the Boyson's issue where he was prosecuted and the non-prosecution of Dullah. Do these allegations suggest a more systemic issues that exist within the NPA?
Look, I think if you look at the data published in the NPA's annual report, which if you go to the back of the annual report, you'll see the division's report separately. And if you drill down into the commercial crimes court and you compare, so the whole of the NPA was exceptionally negatively affected by the lockdown period. So the results, because courts were closed, only urgent matters were heard, et cetera, which seriously negatively affected everybody. But the collapse is far more pronounced in South Gauteng, and it hasn't recovered. And if you also look at other sources of data, there are concerning trends. So I would say that, yes, there are concerning trends for the NPA as a whole, but while the rest of the organization is showing signs of recovery, we're not really seeing that in South Gauteng.
And Chauke's lawyers have come back and argued that Advocate Batohi has poisoned the atmosphere, as they put it, by linking him to state capture without any basis. What do you think is the potential impact of such associations, particularly on the inquiry's perceived fairness?
Well, I think that, if she has made that link, I'm not so sure that the contention is correct. It arises because of a great deal of evidence that has been in the public domain, particularly around Chauke's behavior in the Dullah matter. And so, yes, maybe the atmosphere has been poisoned, but you do have to lay out your case. You do have to say why you've written to the president, and that is what she has done.
And do you think this risks undermining the public's trust of the NPA with all of this playing out as it is?
I think it absolutely had to happen. It's just unfortunate that it took so long. So the panel within the NPA took approximately 2 years to do the investigation. And then the president himself took another 2 years to put forward this inquiry. And the way in which the evidence is being heard also is a stark illustration of how difficult it is to ask witnesses questions 4 or 5 years down the line. And it's a stark reflection of how difficult cases in court are when there are delays, even if this isn't a court of law, a trial, as it were. The problem is it's quite reasonable for a witness to say, I don't recall, when it's 4 years ago. And so, yeah, so there might be some frustration with Advocate Batohi, but the truth of the matter, these things happened a long time ago.
Most certainly. Well, the Nkabinde inquiry resumes back on Thursday. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Redpath, that's Senior Researcher at the Dullah Omar Institute at the University of the Western Cape, Dr. Jean Redpath.